I'll be honest, I've bought a few cheap budget fishing kayaks that looked perfect on paper, only to find out the moment I tried to reel in a decent-sized bass that the hull wobbled, the storage flaps leaked, and the foot steering gave up on me. Those disappointments are why I stopped scrolling past the glossy ads and started actually looking for a model that feels like a smarter investment. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Brooklyn 11.5 Pro is the kind of kayak that promises pro fishing comfort and a 550-pound payload, but the real question is whether those promises translate into a day on the water that feels effortless instead of a constant battle with a flimsy hull. When you're standing on a dock, wondering whether to spend $700 on a serious fishing kayak or stick with a $300 inflatable, the biggest hesitation is always about stability and storage. A stable platform means you can cast a 10-foot line without fearing a tip, and enough lockable storage means you don't have to keep shoving lures into a cramped cockpit between bites. In the fishing world, a kayak that can hold your rod, tackle box, cooler, and a couple of live wells without sagging is a rare find. That's why the hull shape and the way the Brooklyn 11.5 Pro distributes weight matter more than any printed spec sheet. The first thing I noticed about the 11.5 Pro's hull is its stable and durable design claim, which in practice shows up as a fairly wide, flat bottom that sits low in the water. I took it out on a breezy Saturday morning on a 10-mile lake that typically has a chop of 23 feet. The kayak cut through the water without the side-to-side rocking you get in a narrower model, and when I dropped my line, the boat stayed level even as the fish fought. That kind of confidence is what you need when you're trying to keep a line tight for a long hook set. The trade-off is a slightly heavier hull. It's not something you'll lift onto a roof rack without a dolly, but the steadiness it provides is worth the extra effort for anyone who spends more than a couple of hours on the water. Storage is another area where the Brooklyn makes a claim and backs it up. The dry hatches on either side of the cockpit are sealed with a rubber gasket, and they actually stay dry after a full day of fishing in light rain. I stashed a 12-quart cooler, a 30-liter tackle box, and a spare rod, and still had room for a small portable grill. The 550-pound capacity isn't just a number, it translates into real-world room for your gear and the weight of a couple of anglers if you ever decide to bring a friend. The only downside is the hatch openings are a bit narrow, so loading large items requires a little wiggle, but once everything is inside, the compartments hold firm. Steering on a fishing kayak can be a deal-breaker, especially when you're trying to keep a line tight while the fish runs. The Brooklyn's foot-operated rudder is responsive enough that a slight push of the toe lets you swing the boat around a buoy without taking your hands off the rod. I tested it on a winding river stretch where you need to navigate around rocks and fallen trees. The rudder turned quickly, and because it's foot-controlled, my hands stayed on the handle, letting me feel every bite. The trade-off is that the foot pedal adds a bit of learning curve. You have to get used to pressing with the right amount of force, or you'll oversteer and lose a bite. After a couple of trips, it became second nature, but beginners should expect a short adjustment period. For anglers who spend hours casting, the rod holders and adjustable seat are more than just accessories, they become part of the workflow. The built-in rod holders sit just above the gunnels, allowing you to keep a couple of rods ready for quick swaps. The seat slides forward and backward, and you can tilt it slightly to relieve pressure on your lower back during long sessions. I spent a full afternoon targeting pike in a shallow bay, and the seat's range let me sit lower for better stability while still having enough clearance to cast over the water without hitting the deck. The only practical weakness I noticed is that the seat padding, while comfortable, compresses after a few hours of use, so you'll want a thin gel pad if you plan on marathon fishing trips. So, who should actually consider the Brooklyn 11.5 Pro? If you're a serious angler who needs a stable platform for trolling, a solid storage solution for multiple tackle boxes and a cooler, and you're comfortable handling a kayak that weighs a little more than a typical day tripper, this model checks those boxes. It also fits well for guides who need to carry gear for several clients, or for families where two adults might share the same boat on a weekend outing. On the flip side, if you're just looking for a casual